There we go.
So as Stacy said, as we were talking about, doing this lesson today, ringing dampers is something that we get calls for a lot. Wouldn't you say it's one of the number one things, Stacy?
Yep, sticky keys and dampers. Those are the two top. Those are the top two.
Yeah. And most technicians, even if they're able to kind of get the upright dampers working, there's this, I have no idea where to start with the grand dampers. And that's kind of a universal thing for all, a lot of technicians. I would say most technicians, unless they have rebuilding experience, they feel like they're lost. And so what I want to do today is show you some of the kind of the basics. I mean, this is stuff that we never really went into in the PTA course. We just said, kind of, here's some bends, but there's some foundational things that I can show you that will really help make some of this click. And at least you can go through your dampers and be like, okay, I know it's not any of these 3 to 5 things. So for purpose of this lesson, I made this really gnarly, like really gnarly. So here's some grand dampers. If you show up at a house and it's looking like this, you're going to have to add an extra half an hour because it's bad. I've had this where I've come to houses like this and it will be a child or a cat will have gone through and just kind of kinked these over. Or they've just been just mangled from moving the piano. But this is something that's not totally uncommon. And so we're actually going to go ahead and start looking into this. And Robert, I am so thrilled that you're here because you've been the one having a lot of grand damper questions, which is great. So Robert, welcome. This is almost my dedication to you.
Awesome.
So the first thing I want to show you is, when you get to dampers like this, there's going to be a set of things that you need to figure out. And what I'm going to do is just unscrew each of these damper levers screws, just so that we can remove the dampers themselves and we can kind of get a better look at what's going on and do our preliminary bending. So again, a lot of people don't know that there's some basic preliminary bending that I would say solves 85% of the issues. So we're just going to go here, 2, 3. So let's start with some of this and just kind of go through some of the basics. So when you have, let's see, yeah, you can see this pretty well. So we have the wires and there's some essential bends that you need to make sure are in order. So for instance, one of the things you need to do is right here. We want to see, because a lot of times you're going to come to, and you're going to pull these out and this is more extreme, but what we want to see is that wire is parallel. You see that? You see how it's kind of taking a nosedive? One of the simplest bends that we can do right away is make sure that we have a parallel right here. So that's an essential thing to do because a lot of times that will be a reason why these dampers are bleeding out or not working properly. So that's one right there. So making sure that this is parallel with something, you just kind of get an idea. The next one, and another way you can do this too is kind of going from the top and just be like, okay, here's parallel, here's vertical. The next one I wanted to show you is this right here. I'm going to move that up a bit. This is an essential one. So a lot of times you're going to come to wires that are like this, that they kind of go upwards or they're too far down. You see that? So what we want is for these wires to have it parallel here, and then it goes down, and then it's parallel perfect right here. You can see that this one already is a little bit, it's kind of elevated. It's going up a little bit. So again, we want these straight bends. Questions so far, because again, this is some essential stuff. So we've already kind of made sure that this is parallel, that this is parallel. We've made sure that this is vertical, or that this wire is not going anywhere.
What?
But these are some of the basic ones that when you take one of these out, those should be 2 or 3 bends that you are double checking right away.
I was gonna ask you, what makes them bend out of place, like in the first place? Because you're like, is it
A,
like,
a lot of times it's other technicians trying to mess with a bleeding damper. I would say that they've come in here, they've gone underneath the the cavity of the grand piano and taken some pliers and tried to bend these bends. And they've tried to manipulate it left or right, and it still isn't working. And so they get frustrated, and that's kind of what happens. So these are the core ones, and I'm going to show you, we're going to put those back and we can kind of see what I'm seeing. Now, keep in mind another thing to consider, and this is in the factory, you can tell sometimes. Some pianos, they have these bends, but the reality is if you were to take out those bends and just put a straight, it might be just as well. So double check that. So sometimes we have, I'll kind of show you this as an example. Let's say it's going like this, and then it's going like that. I've come to pianos that are kind of like this. And I look at that, I'm like, wait a second, let's erase all of these bends, get it all straight so that everything is entirely just parallel. And there's some pianos that works well at, instead of having these bends like that. So you're going to have to kind of look and see. So for instance, a lot of historic Steinways are just, even though there's some weird bends that somebody put over time, a lot of times it's meant to just as easily be parallel all the way through. So keep that in mind as you go. So I'm going to go ahead and try to go ahead and put in these 2 dampers back in and see where we're landing and see what it looks like. And then the third one is going to be this mystery one. And there's one bend in here that I didn't learn how to do for about 20 years. There's a bend that it's the secret bend that that nobody knows about unless you're a piano builder. Unless you're in the factory, you know about this bend. And the only reason I found out about it is because a technician went to the Busendorfer factory where he saw them hanging them, and they showed him that there's this secret bend that nobody knows about. So I'm going to wait to the end to show you that. I'm going to wait till more people are here. That way I can get the wow factor and fill up on all that. Questions so far? Hopefully you won't see a kid running through as he's going to on his way to the pool, because right now we're in Arizona and it's getting nice. So let's go ahead and just kind of zoom in. I want to get this so that we can really get a good angle. And I might, so bear with me, we're going to kind of go on a little ride. There we go. I'm going to full size my screen here just so I can see. Full screen, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so let's start with the first 2. Let me make sure that I got these all in order. Yes, 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 perfect. So again, I've gone through and made sure that all of these are parallel like they should be. Actually, this one isn't. I'm going to start with the one that we did just the standard. We took away the bends and just did this horizontal. Made sure that it's parallel. So let's go ahead and put that in here. I'm going to drop it down and see what we come up with. Back this up. So already I can see that this was not the way to go. So this was going to be one of those examples where this was meant to have those bends. because I'm looking up top right here, as you can see.
Hey, David, can I ask you a
Yep,
question?
go for it.
If you turn that around, no, it wouldn't help. Never mind.
Yeah,
How
I
about
kind of want you to be able to see, pretend these are the bass strings. You know what I mean? Like,
that?
yeah, I could do a side view, but it really doesn't show the view that the technician needs to be able to see.
No, what I was talking about was the damper, putting the wire on the other side of the damper, but there's no hole up in the top to go through. So that
Correct.
wouldn't work either.
Yes, that's right, Janice. I love how your brain works, though, Janice. You're always kind of looking into like, well, maybe this, maybe this.
Well,
Right.
I took the fabric off of one exhauster today, so it's been a very interesting learning day.
Oh, all right. I'm using my smiley frownies. That's the my term for them, and I'm going to create those bends. I'm going to recreate those. I could already kind of see where they used to be, and so I'm just going to go back to those. And so I'm seeing now I like that a lot better. But one of the things I am seeing is it is touching on the back nicely, but the front, you see all that wobble? That is definitely going to bleed out. So what I'm going to do is simply lift it up and bend it forward so that I have both sides touching. There we go. So essentially I have both sides touching. It looks like it's coming up straight and nice. The last thing that I'm going to do is tighten this down and see if it's traveling upwards nicely. So I'm just going to kind of use my finger, put it underneath the tab, and just go up. And so I am not liking that. You see how it's moving? It's going. So that is, and so this damper, to be honest, probably would work. It is hitting both sides, but definitely it's not doing it nicely, and that is definitely not a pretty look. So what I'm going to do is using my smiley frownies, I'm going to go ahead and make a couple bends to accentuate that a bit, because it looks like when it comes up and it wants to go back down, it's starting to get much better. But look at the head. You see how it's tilted to the left? I'm going to go ahead and just tilt this head. I'm trying to do this one-handed, so tilt this head over just a bit.
So if you're doing the RPT exam, which
Yep.
which I've just signed up for the PTG, so they're doing that this summer. They would be looking for all of these dampers to go up and down properly and hit correctly. Is that correct?
Correct, but they're not going to be as mean to you as this.
As you are? Okay.
As I am. I'll be meaner to you. When are you thinking about doing that, Janice?
Well, I'm going to the convention in July.
Okay.
And they are offering the classes and the testing there. I don't think I'm going to be able to do all three of them. I'm not at that point yet, but I could at least get a start.
Well, I cannot wait to show you next week what just arrived at the shop in Portland. So it pertains to some of what you're talking about. So yes, we'll talk about that next week. So I'm looking at this one and I'm actually liking the way it's traveling up and down. You see how it's going vertically up and down. It's not bonking over left or right to get into the string. It's just nicely traveling. So with that being said, I'm going to move on to my next damper. And I made one of these way worse, so I'm just going to try to see. So let's look at this one. I want to double check, and this is one where it's definitely not parallel. Actually, I think this is potentially the one that I wanted to show you the really crazy bend at the end. So I'm going to wait to that one. So we're going to go to this one instead. So again, I can see right here, there's just, you see how it kind of dips down right here? That would be one of those ones that I want to go ahead and start making so that is nice and straight. Angle this up. I can already see right here, this looks pretty janky. I'm sure we're going to run into issues with that, but we don't know yet. You know what I mean? We're not going to know until we thread it through that damper guide rail and really see what we're working with. So that's what I'm doing right here. Oddly enough, it's seating on the strings pretty well. It just looks horrendous. Can you see that? It just looks super janky. And I don't like that at all. So what I'm going to do is just, again, I like the look of this one. It's simple. It's pretty. I want to go ahead and just kind of fix this one a little bit.
Would you make them kind of parallel? Would that work? Is that what you're
to each other?
Yeah.
Yes, 100%, Janice. Following these bends so that they're looking, you know, closer and more uniform.
But
Kind of hard to do this.
At some point,
Go ahead, Janice.
At one point, you will get to a point where those parallels are going to have to change because of the dampers changing off of the, right, from the base to a more like the mid-range.
Correct.
So, okay.
Correct.
I'm just learning, dude.
You're learning. You're getting it. You're picking up what I'm laying down here. So, like, this is one of those examples that sometimes I get to and I'm like, geez, what am I doing to this thing? You know, it's like I need to kind of start over. So this is a good example of, okay, if you're ever, you've worked on the same damper for a couple minutes and you're like, I am just not getting this. This isn't looking right. I need to reset. So this would be a good time to take it and just be like, okay, let's go back up here. How's this looking? And just kind of reset. Okay, this is what I'm looking at. This is just not great. So I'm going to lower this. I'm going to get this parallel. I'm going to go ahead and get this so that it's looking better. And this is just a simple way of doing it. And I guarantee you, Stacy, correct me if I'm wrong, most technicians will not go to this extent. They will not know what to do or take the time to figure this out. They'll just be like, sorry, your damper's not working.
Or they'll bend it the way that you were, they'll add more.
Or they'll bend it that other way.
That's what I mean.
They'll just be like, okay, I just need to get out of here. I need to get it to a place, get it to a point, and just get out. And to be honest, I used to be that way too. I think we all start out that way, but let's elevate it. Andy Barlow, watering the lawn, everything. All right, let's go back to this. Yeah, this is one of those things that as much as we would have wanted to add more to the course itself when we were creating that initial PTA course, this was so hard to teach, and it's really better in this live setting. But I can already tell this is looking better. This is a little bit less janky looking. I'm going to go ahead and tighten it down to see if this is traveling upwards correctly. So let's go ahead and see how it looks. Go a little closer. So it's definitely hitting in different spots. So I'm just kind of tapping it, and I can feel like that back end is floating still. There we go. Okay. So one of the things I'm noticing, let's see if you can see it. You see how it's definitely looks like that right side of the string is kind of not really being grabbed by that felt.
It's not traveling straight.
It's not, yes, and that's a good point. So when I go and just bring them up, let's see, here we go. See that? And this is a good test. And a lot of times it's like, okay, well, which one is not traveling correctly? It kind of looks like a little bit of both. And so this would be a time to go ahead, use your smiley frownies, and and just go ahead and I don't know that for a fact that the right hand side of that string is not being held right. So I'm just pivoting that over with these guys. That's much better. You see that? So a lot of times, whoa, shoot. A lot of times it's that easy to go ahead and make some of those bends. And a lot of times it's good to do at least. I have a lot of boxes in this. This is like the only like not done room in our Arizona space. So just don't worry about the mess. But a lot of times if you can do those preliminary bends where you're making things parallel, making things vertical, and at least get to square one, drop it in and see how it's doing. Because a lot of times you have a couple of the dampers working perfectly. The traveling straight, and you can look to those as kind of your guides. You can see how those bends are working and go off of that. But the one bend that I didn't know about that I only found out about recently is one of those bends that's kind of that last, okay, I've tried to move things over. It's not working. And I'm going to go ahead and just out of focus, make this more extreme so that I can kind of drive home the point. And again, when somebody showed me this, it was like, what? How did I not know this? So I gone ahead and made this way more like ridiculously bad to kind of just show you. And what I'm going to do is just make it so that all the other bends are correct. So like everything else is perfect except for this one bend that I'm going to show you how to do.
So it was kind of a V8 moment for you, huh?
Oh yeah, it was just like,
Dunk.
you know the movie Ratatouille, when the critic like takes a bite and he's like transported back like to his childhood or something. Like it was like that moment for me, like learning something so like crazy. Yeah, I'm actually just gonna tighten this down so you can see. Again, this is outrageous. You'll never come to this, and it will never be this bad. But at least we could use this to drive home the point of what I'm trying to show you. And where this is a really good thing to do is when you have old, like historic grand pianos that the dampers are so close to themselves at some points, and you have them vibrating against the strings, the damper wires or the damper heads. And so this is, you know, a fix for that. Oh my gosh. I think I might have made it too bad. It's like, it's like, no, you're not going to be able to make that work. Let's do this. Andy, is that a water pit in front of you or a fire pit?
What, are you talking to me?
Yeah.
It's like are you talking about this thing behind me?
Oh, you had something in front of you. I thought that there was like a little water basin or something.
Yeah, it's a cold plunge. It's like an ice plunge.
So at the end of the video, you're going to do that, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so I'm going to show you this. Here we go. This is bad. This one's bad. Let's see here. There we go. What we have is, you see the spacing up here. These two are like this, and then for whatever reason, this space is just crazy. You're going to run into pianos where it's like that. You're like, wow, it's crazy. When it goes up, it wants to bounce out of this string. And so historically, what I've done to try to replicate or fix this is I take my pliers and try to just down here, bend that hammer head or that damper head over, okay? And try to make it work. That is actually not the way to do it. And the way you do this is actually simpler. It makes a lot of sense, but I had to have somebody show it to me. And it's right here, and it's this hidden bend that for whatever reason, I didn't think you could do it. And it's right there. It's that bend right there. And you're able to take your needle nose pliers and go and manipulate this right here. So let's do it. So you see how much space there is? There's this 1/4 inch. I'm going to go ahead and lessen that by pressing this in. And now I've made it so that there's far less space. And what that does is you can create more space at the top or less between the dampers from side to side. And that allows for that hammer to travel or that damper to travel up and down and sit just on that string the way you want it. So that's that one last bend that most people will never know about or do. And again, I didn't know about it for 20 years. I had no idea that that was a bend that you can do, because historically technicians are just shown, no, you can bend it here or here. You can manipulate the damper, up or down a little bit, but to be able to manipulate it coming at the wire coming out of the damper head was something untouched. That's factory. You can't do anything about it. And it wasn't, again, until about 5 years ago that somebody showed me, no, you can absolutely adjust that in or out using needle nose pliers. So put this in your toolbox, experiment with it a little bit. See if you have any of the damper heads on your pianos. They're like, wow, yeah, all the bends, inside look good, but it is definitely off to the left or off to the right. I'm going to go ahead and pull this damper out and either elongate this bend, creating more space between the start of the bend and this head, or shorten that distance. And again, that's something that they do all the time within the factories. But we as field technicians really didn't really know about that. Stacy, have you ever heard about this?
No, I haven't actually. I was wondering how often you use that bend over the other ones. Is that like your go-to now, or?
So what it is if I need to move this head, because when you bend it down here, you're just kind of tilting it. You know what I mean? Whereas if you move it right at this base, you're literally moving the head over left or right, not tilting it. And so and this is a great trick. If you don't want to tilt the head, you literally want to move the head by a 1/16 or so left or right. So it allows you to make sure that because whenever you bend something down here, it is going to kind of go up at a weird way. So a lot of times it's better to go ahead and make sure this is straight. If you need this head to be moved over so it's hitting the string correctly, move it at this point.
Hey, David.
Yeah.
Is there any danger trying to bend it that close to the damper head of breaking the head?
There is some danger in that I've seen where technicians have ground off a portion of this because it's so close to the string. Usually I see this on rebuilt Steinways, that they're like, wow, this is too close to the string. They didn't know how to bend these correctly, so they just ground this down. That's the only caveat to this. I thought the same thing, Robert, like, well, what if I break that joint right there? I've never run into that. The only thing
it's not going to pop out of the head.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, and if it does, simply, I've had that happen not from doing this trick, but just from them popping out or being loose.
Okay.
I simply pull it out, put a little bit of that thick set CA glue, medium CA glue, and then put it back, spray the hardener, and then it's fine. But yeah, this is one of those tricks that when I started doing it, I was like, it solved that last little bit of damper issue that I could never quite get, because yeah, I can pivot it over down here and bend it, but then it's still not traveling quite right. So this allows me to do that.
So this is almost like doing a key squaring up front on the key bend.
Oh, Janice, that's a really good example. Yes.
You're moving it left and right so that it's even across the whole
So you
road.
see that? You see how it's still? So what I'm going to do, just to show you, see, it's still too far to the right. I'm going to go ahead and show you this trick. Again, I'm going to take it. I'm going to lessen that space right here. And in this case, I'm simply going to go ahead and bend it that way. Kind of bend it back. So I'm leaving just a little bit of space, and we'll go ahead and drop it back in. Much better. So you can see that space is getting less and less, and it's way closer. Now I can see that I'm tilted just a little bit, so I'm going to use my smiley frownies, tilt this back a bit. And we're pretty much all now straight. So that in a nutshell are kind of some of the things that you should keep in mind when you're having these damper issues. Removing them, making sure the bends aren't extreme from another technician trying to fix it. A lot of times once you go ahead and just clean up those bends, making sure that they're squared off, like Janice said, it's kind of like squaring off those keys so everything's traveling correctly. And then that last little bit of like, wow, I know everything's traveling right, except for this head. It's too far over to the left or too far over to the right. I'm going to go ahead and pull it off, and moving that one bend in or out to move that hammer head or that damper head, and you'll be set. So those are kind of the tricks that again, that last one is only something that I've recently in the last 5 years started doing, only on the recommendation of somebody who went to the Busendorfer factory, and they had these like women there that have been doing it for 20 years, and they showed it, and his mind was blown. Questions? I'm just gonna.
So if you break the wire, can you get just the wire, or do you have to replace the whole damper head?
You could totally get just the wire. I think they sell them at a shaft.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe they sell them at shaft. I've never broken the wire. Watch, I like break the wire in one of these tests.
Well, I'm just thinking if another technician has done some pretty horrendous bends on it, you may have metal fatigue. And when you go to bend it back, it might bust on you. But it's nice to know if there's wires available to, or maybe you should have 5 or 6 of them in your toolkit to replace just in case.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a little bit excessive just because I've never run into it. But yeah, certainly one of them. But yeah, sometimes, Janice, it is nice to know that it's available if you need it. That's interesting. So I was having some issues with this, putting it back. You see how it's kind of going up? I accidentally moved it upwards, so it wasn't sitting just right. So now I'm actually going to bend it back down like that. But again, now that you know that this is a potential area where you can make bends, it really helps gives you another perspective and another place where you can make things happen just right. And again, I would say most technicians have no idea that you can do this. I didn't know for decades.
Is this the kind of thing that you'll just do this on a few hammers here and there? Like, you're not like doing a whole piano, right, of this? Okay.
With this bend, no. And usually if you're in the field and you run across this, it's onesie twosies that need this kind of work. Like, oh man, we have a ringing damper, this happened. The only time I'll have to do this to a whole set is if I'm replacing all the damper felt. And I'm like, okay, I have to do all of these and get everything going just right. That's the only time I'll have to do this level of work. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll strip the damper heads of the not only the felt, but the finish. And we'll go ahead and clean the wires, rebend them so that we're kind of at square one, and then go from the ground up. Big job. That's why whenever you're replacing damper felt, don't just think, oh, wow, damper felt's only $100 and I can charge $300 and make this work. No, you're there a day and a half. This is a $1,500 job. So just keep that in mind. And again, early on, it was just like, great, the parts are cheap. I can get it done in an hour. Nope. Give yourself more time. And what you're all going to find is as the pool of qualified technician dwindles more and more, you're only going to be hurting yourself, because you're really not going to lose any business to other people, because there's no other people to lose it to. So charge accordingly, because otherwise you're going to get yourself in trouble. Hey. Looks like you're in a big old truck.
Now, one problem of undercharging one person is it goes by word of mouth, and then the next person expects to have that good rate too, and then you get yourself into a rock and a hard place there, huh?
You really do. We did that early on, not as much as some of the other people we knew about in the industry, but we had a hard time, and it still comes back at us because, we've had multiple price increases, but sometimes people don't tune in. Oh yeah, I tuned with you 5 years ago or 7 years ago, and you charged me half of what you're charging. Sorry, we can give you we can split the difference for this tuning and, earn your business for the next one, things like that. But you're right. Luckily with this kind of work, it's kind of a one and done. Usually people aren't broadcasting, hey, Janice only charged me $400 to replace my damper felt. They're really not telling people about that. But yes, tuning and cleaning and servicing, that will get around. And be clear with your piano teachers that you are giving them a special rate. Because a lot of times, if you do a special rate, because a lot of times teachers will be like, great, I get my tunings for half price, and I'm going to tell all my students about that. And then they go to call you and they're like, great, I want Mrs. Smith's tuning price. And you're like, that's for Mrs. Smith. And then you get mad, and that's happened before too. We've kind of had all of these things happen to us. So I guess that's what happens. For those, I'll talk about it on Monday, because I'll be at the Portland facility on Monday, and we'll go over some of the new stuff that we got into the shop that was made specifically for us. And we'll kind of go over that and some potential live training possibilities and stuff like that using some of the resources that we have. So is anybody else interested in getting the RPT status, doing the technical? Kind of, maybe, not yet, not really, we don't care.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Johnny, are you a superstar yet? You're still here.
Still here. About to have band practice tonight, so maybe get some news. We'll see.
Awesome. We're taking requests for Wednesday. We could do a big old Q&A. Go ahead.
I do have quite a few questions collected already, so like about 15. So keep sending them. That'll take up some of it. Oh, you just blast through those though. So
yeah, I think we're due. Yeah, I think we're due for another Q&A one. How many of those are business focused versus skill and technique focused, Stacy?
Most of those are skill technique focused, actually.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, from what
for those that are interested in learning more business stuff, so what we know we're going to experience is as everybody's skills increase, there's going to be there's always going to be like, oh yeah, that's helpful information for some of the skill one. As you grow into your business, you may not have as much time to do all the weekly ones, but you may want to join the weekly business mastermind session. And so for that being said, for those that are interested in that, is a morning slot more appealing? Say it's like right after coffee hour, or is a afternoon slot? Again, we're going to open this up to the group because we're trying to get an idea. Andy, I know that you're ramping up your business. I think Justin is as well. Morning for Andy. Yeah. Just curious. Just because we need to start making some plans for some of this stuff, because the business mastermind stuff is going to be coming up on us fast, and we want to have a plan in place before it hits us.
Well, one thing you have to kind of take into consideration is that a morning on an East Coast is really early for me and even earlier for you. So,
Mhm.
some people may want it in the morning, but 7 o'clock in the morning is on the East Coast is what, 4 o'clock here?
Yeah, no, no, no. I'm fully aware of that. That ain't happening. I was thinking more of a Friday after coffee hour kind of a thing, having it be from like 8 to 9 on Fridays, having that be the thing. Again, it's more for business, and what we would be talking about is actually everything from setting up scheduling, websites, marketing, branding, scripts. Um, Protocols, all of those things that were never really covered in the course itself that we created back in the day, that are really helpful as you really launch into your business. Because as Stacy and I were talking together with Andy, it's when you start in the world of piano servicing, you're really not. Yes, you're thinking someday I'm going to start a business, but that's not what you're geared in at. You're like, I just need to learn how to work with a tuning hammer and set a tuning and do all this. But it does sneak up on you like, oh, I know how to do this. I want to start making money at this. What do I do next? And so that does sneak up on people. And so we want to make sure that we're prepared for that, because I think eventually, even if you're not thinking about it right now, like, yeah, maybe the business somehow it may turn a corner and you're like, no, this is getting really fun. I want to start doing more of it. And that's what we see more and more of. And there's just really nothing out there. And we think we can help in that. So I like the idea of more of a morning. I'm usually more alert in the mornings than in the afternoons personally, because I have coffee.
Well,
But
one of the piano techs up here in Flagstaff called me on Friday and said, "Hey, Janice, somebody down here needs to have their player piano done."
did you do it? Are you doing it?
No, well, they haven't contacted me, but I haven't even finished my own yet. But that was certainly a kick in my backside to say, "Hey, get on with it, Janice, because there is work out there, and the piano techs are willing to send it over to me because they don't want to deal with player units." So
Janice, I don't think there's not a person here that is thinking, Janice, get on with it. You're not doing it quick enough.
well, I'm saying I'm not doing it quick enough because it's been sitting in my kitchen for a couple of months, but I do need to get on it. And I did take one of the exhauster fabrics off today so that I can use it as a template for the replacement ones. So usually what they do is they heat it up and they just kind of tear it off. Oh no, I very carefully picked it off so that I can use it as a pattern. Okay, so I'm a seamstress as well, so I know patterns and how to cut it to make it work so I don't have to do so much guesswork on it.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah, I was really surprised when he called me because I had just met him on Tuesday.
What am I looking at? What is that? Describe that. What is that? I just see a bunch of.
Dennis, that's the picture you sent me. I was trying
Oh, that's the end. That's the end of the bellows unit down there.
Oh my
And
gosh.
do you see where there's a piece of masking tape? There is a
Yeah.
hole there. And somebody thought that you could have a good vacuum if you just put a piece of masking tape over that hole. And there's one on the other side of the whole unit too. I don't know what they're for, but you certainly would want to have something a little bit better than a piece of masking tape if you're having a vacuum. So I got to get some rubber stoppers, I think, to fill that. But I have a feeling that's for the quiet on the right hand side of the damper.
It's
So
one of those things. I'm pretty good at working on acoustic pianos, and you would think that some of that would have translated over to working on player pianos, and it absolutely hasn't with me.
to. It's
So,
a
like,
different world.
it's an entirely different world, and I commend you for entering it
It's like
because,
refinishing versus
yes.
being piano technology. They're different. They are very different. Yeah.
and I wrote to Stacy this morning. I said I really did jump in with both feet at this point, you know. So
Absolutely.
we'll see where we are. Excuse me, I'm
Robert,
cold.
Robert, you're was it you that was starting this month or somebody else that was really starting this month or next month? Maybe
It was Joel, right?
It was
I think
Joel.
Joel.
Okay. But you're, Robert, done doing some of the free stuff. Maybe that's what you were saying.
Yes, I'm finishing up, and I have more time in June because my contract renews, but
That's right.
I get 20%. I've negotiated a reduction, so I'll at least be off an extra day a week,
20%. Okay.
and that's helpful. Yeah.
Andy, what about you? Are you out there tuning, slinging tunings? Isn't that what we say? Out there slinging tunings?
Yeah, my plan is to launch, kind of officially launch this month. So I've done a bunch. I have like 13 Google reviews now, and I should have about, I don't know, 18 to 20 before the end of April. And I just feel like that's gonna give me like a really strong foundation to
Yeah.
just launch out. But I haven't charged anybody. Some people have paid me just because they wanted to, but
Yeah.
I'm not really officially open for business yet, but I'm almost there.
And you're going to be still doing the ministry, is that right? You're still full pastor
Yeah, I'm
guy?
a full-time pastor, so that's like my main thing. And so I'm really trying to figure out, it'll
Yeah.
kind of be an experiment the next few months, figuring out how to keep it sustainable. Because
Yeah.
I think like 4 or 5 tunings a week is probably all I can realistically. So
Yeah.
which is fine with me.
And Justin, you're still doing delivery right now. When are you thinking about getting it going?
I don't know. I'm like really struggling with the tuning still sometimes.
Okay.
I don't know if it's my piano, because I did my mom's piano and my sister's, and they turned out pretty good, but mine won't stay.
Yeah.
Like I'll leave some notes 5 to 10 cents high, and then by the time I'm done with the unison, it's 15 cents low. And the pins feel pretty tight when
Okay.
I'm moving it. They don't feel like super loose. So I don't know.
What I would check, Justin, is check the bridge pins. So if you have a crack in the bridge, where the bridge pins are seated in there, what's happening is, and I've had this happen to me. I'm like, why is this never staying in tune? I come back to it. It's always that flat because that's extreme. Those bridge pins were cracked. There's a crack in there where all those bridge pins are seated in there, and they were moving in on themselves. And that's a really real thing. So I would check that.
Yeah, it sat down in a shed, so it wasn't in the weather, but it wasn't in a house like conditioned or anything for a while. So, and also the shed flooded a little bit and probably
Yeah,
caught
that might have
high
something to
up
do
on
with the
the bottom
tuning
of the piano.
stability.
So that might be some issues. But I'm gonna talk to, I have a lot of friends that live near me that have I have access to like 8 pianos
Yeah.
just in my immediate area that I can go practice tuning on. So once I get that done, probably going to try and focus more on getting a business. I already got a website. I purchased a domain yesterday because I finally thought of an idea I wanted. So.
I love it. Hey, Stacy.
Yeah.
We keep on. Yeah, that's exactly it. Right there is what we're talking about, Justin.
Yeah, if it looks like that, you're in trouble. So that's when we did. I'm like, oh, yeah, that was pretty bad. So sorry. What was that, David?
Let's go ahead and put on the calendar for Monday, because this keeps on coming up, the idea of pitch raises. And maybe I'll go ahead and detune it in the Monday morning, and I'll just make it outrageous. And I'll just kind of whip through, and I'll kind of explain as we go. Here's how I'm first off communicating to the customer. And here's how I'm setting expectations and the goals for the tuning itself and the protocol, and see kind of how I'm moving, how I'm taking it. So we'll do that on Monday. Pitch raises on Monday. On Wednesday, we'll unveil our new toy at the office, and kind of talk about some of the future things with that.
Is this a toy we're going to want in our tool bag, or is this a teaching toy?
This is a teaching toy. This is a teaching toy that people can't get their hands on, that we somehow were able to get. So
cool.
I'm so
Here's
curious
all your-
Justin, if we got
Your
some
action models. So are these the bridge pins?
Correct. Right there.
Yeah.
So it's where the string threads through them. So they'll thread through those, and then they'll that's the bridges. And so what you'll see is where the bridge pins are in there. If there's cracks forming, you have to get really close in order to see them, to see if there's cracks along where those pins are inside going into those bridges.
Yeah, the one I showed you was an extreme, but even like little cracks will affect it.
Okay.
Yeah. So investigate that, see if that's what's going on. I mean, to be honest, if you do have that much flooding and weather fluctuations, that isn't going to help your situation. But
No. Yeah, it was kind of a throwaway piano that I thought maybe I could fix up, and there's probably not worth it. So,
yeah.
but
No,
I
we'll do
can
pitch.
still regulate the action and stuff, so it's good for that.
Just so that I can prepare for Monday's class, Andy, what specific questions or things are you curious about regarding the pitch raise?
Well, I think I just need to do it in a low stake situation once or twice before I do it for a customer. So since I use TuneLab, I've been just trying to like look up on YouTube how to like use my software to do it.
Yep.
But either way, I would just love to see your process.
Yeah, I'll show you the process, because more than anything, it's a process of educating the customer, I would say, more than anything else. And that could be done whether it's CyberTuner, TuneLab, Verituner, doesn't matter. I'll show you my process for it and how it's communicated.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful, because I don't personally feel like, I've heard people say like, oh, I'll do a huge pitch raise and it'll be stable first time. But I'm like, I feel like I would just,
Yeah.
I feel like I would make a disaster out of that and the customer would be unhappy. And so I don't know.
No, I'm excited. We'll go over pitch raises on Monday. That's a good one, because that's a reoccurring one that we kind of keep on coming back to and people asking about. And what we're going to be trying to do is, because we want all of these to be able to be in some kind of a library moving forward at some point, we're going to be sticking to a specific topic, saying, okay, hey, we're talking about pitch raises on Monday. Bring any pitch raise question, anything regarding that. And we'll kind of go from there, so that it's more focused. It may be that we don't have as much to talk about in some of these. They may be shorter depending on how much material we want to go over, but they're going to be more focused so that people could search these in the future. So.
Hey, David, can I share? I broke my first string. It was awesome. I don't know why I was excited. But I communicated with the customer. It was a pitch raise on a Wurlitzer Spinet. And I told him 1986 looks like was your last tuning. So you could break a string here. A string could break during this. And it popped. And he was kind of right there. I said, no, but it was one of the bass strings where there were two. I said, you got one left. You're not going to want to replace this at this point. He was just happy. It was one of my last free ones. So I feel like I've checked that box.
You did.
I had a little sigh of relief. Okay, I broke a string and I survived. So it was.
Did it scare you? Were you scared?
Well, when you did it for the class, and I remembered that sound, that pop, when it happened, it's like, whoa! I did jolt a little bit, but I was actually more relieved.
Yeah. It is one of those things when you kind of make this thing up to be a bigger monster than it is, and then when it happens, it's like, okay, I can handle that.
Yeah, I'm so glad I told him about it.
Oh,
because
no
when he
kidding.
said, yeah, I said, see, this happens. He was fine, because he just kind of wanted it for his wife to play a little bit, and he still has a string left. And I didn't even pull it out. I said, look, you could replace this. I could get down under here, but it's going to be worth more.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you more, etc.
Yeah, that was huge, Robert, that you said that. And that is what we'll talk about on Monday too, is just doing right by the customer and kind of covering your butt, because it's a really real possibility of string breaking. And if you hadn't have done that, Robert, it goes from a string broke to you broke my string.
Right.
Real
Yeah, I'm so
quick.
glad, because I thought about that. I thought I need to phrase this correctly. This is 1986 here. It's a possibility a string could break in this, rather than I might break a string. So I was very careful with my wording, and I was so relieved that I said it that way.
Oh my goodness, good job. Good job. All right. Well, on Wednesday, I'm going to discuss some stuff with Stacy, but given the amount of questions, we'll kind of look into that, and more questions, the better, because it turns out to be that these Wednesdays seem to be a lot of Q&A. And it's so funny because they're so helpful, because it helps steer where people are at and what direction to go. And so the more questions, the better, the more wins to show, here's the issues, all of that stuff. This is the time, especially on Wednesdays, this is the time to do it, because you get those answers. So we'll keep it going. All right. Get some needle nose pliers and start bending some damper wires.
Will do.
I'll see you on Wednesday.
See you Wednesday, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.